always been drawn to the mysterious, the eerie, the inexplicable. So when I landed a job at the prestigious restaurant, What a Burger, I thought I was just taking another step towards paying my bills. Little did I know, this job would lead me down a path into the darkest corners of human nature. It was a cozy place, nestled in a quiet corner of town. The facade was adorned with vintage signs, and the soft glow of neon lights welcomed diners inside. Once you stepped through the door, you were transported to another era, a time when people savored their meals, talked, laughed, and lived life. I was hired as a waiter, a position that seemed like a dream come true. The restaurant had an impeccable reputation, but what I didn't know then was that its charm masked something sinister beneath the surface. On my first day, a manager, Mr. Reynolds, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a stern demeanor, gave me a tour. He explained that What a Burger had been in operation for decades, and its success was built on tradition, secrecy, and a closely guarded recipe. The first peculiarity I noticed was the staff. They were like family, a tight-knit group that rarely spoke to outsiders. They had a code, an unspoken rule: ask no questions. I quickly realized that if I wanted to fit in, I needed to abide by it. Weeks turned into months, and I settled into my role. The customers were a mix of regulars and newcomers, each lured by the restaurant's mystique. But there was something about the place that was unsettling. It was in the way the other employees watched me, their eyes hollow, as if they had seen too much. It was in the kitchen, where chefs prepared dishes with a methodical precision that bordered on obsession. And it was in the food itself, delicious. Yes, but there was something about it that made your skin crawl. One evening, I overheard a conversation between Mr. Reynolds and an elderly man in a dark corner of the restaurant. They spoke in hushed tones, and I couldn't catch all the words, but the old man's eyes were filled with desperation, and Mr. Reynolds's face was devoid of emotion. It sent shivers down my spine. As the weeks passed, my unease grew. I began to notice that certain customers would visit more frequently than seemed normal. They would sit alone, order the same meal every time, and leave without saying a word. It was as if they were under some kind of spell. One evening, a disheveled man walked in. He was pale, his eyes wild with fear. He stumbled to a table and ordered a burger, his voice trembling. When I brought his meal, he looked up at me, his eyes pleading for help. "They won't let me leave," he whispered. "Please, you have to help me." I didn't know what to do. I glanced around, but the other staff members were busy, and Mr. Reynolds was nowhere in sight. I couldn't just leave my post. I whispered back, "I'll find a way to help you. Just stay calm." Before I could take any action, Mr. Reynolds appeared at the man's table. He placed a hand on the man's shoulder, his grip like a vice. "You shouldn't have come here," he said coldly. The man's eyes widened in terror, and he made a feeble attempt to escape, but Mr. Reynolds's grip tightened, and he was forced back into his chair. The other diners seemed oblivious, lost in their own worlds. I watched in horror as Mr. Reynolds leaned in close to the man and whispered something in his ear. Whatever he said sent a shudder through the man's body, and he went limp. Mr. Reynolds released his hold and walked away, leaving the man staring blankly at his half-eaten burger. I couldn't take it anymore. The darkness that had seeped into What a Burger had infected me too. I knew I had to find out what was happening, no matter the cost. Late one night, When the restaurant was closed, I snooped around. I discovered a door in the kitchen that led to a hidden basement. It was locked, but I managed to pick the lock with trembling hands. The stairs descended into darkness, and a foul odor wafted up. As I descended, I heard voices, whispers that seemed to come from all around. They were murmuring incoherent words, and the air grew colder with each step. The basement was dimly lit, revealing a chilling scene. There, in the center of the room, was a massive, ancient-looking cauldron. It was filled with a thick, bubbling liquid that emitted an otherworldly glow. Surrounding the cauldron were the other employees, dressed in dark robes, their eyes vacant, their hands outstretched towards the cauldron. They were chanting in a language I couldn't understand, their voices a haunting chorus. I watched in horror as Mr. Reynolds approached the cauldron, a twisted smile on his face. He dipped a ladle into the liquid and brought it to his lips, savoring the taste. It was then that I realized the truth. The secret ingredient in Whataburger was not something ordinary. It was something sinister, something that had enslaved the employees and entrapped the customers. I knew I had to escape and reveal the restaurant's dark secret to the world. But as I turned to leave, my foot knocked over a stack of plates, the clatter echoing through the basement. The chanting stopped, and all eyes turned towards me. Mr. Reynolds' smile vanished, replaced by a look of fury. "You should not have come here," he said, his voice low and menacing. I ran for my life, racing up the stairs and bursting through the kitchen door. But the staff members were right behind me, their eyes devoid of humanity. I sprinted through the restaurant, knocking over chairs and tables in a desperate attempt to escape. Just as I reached the front door, it swung shut with a deafening slam. I was trapped, surrounded by the staff members who had once been my colleagues. Their faces contorted with an unnatural hunger, they advanced towards me. In that moment, I realized the true horror of Whataburger. It wasn't the cauldron or the secret ingredient that made it a place of darkness. It was the people who had succumbed to its power, who had traded their souls for a taste of its forbidden delicacies. As they closed in on me, I felt a coldness creeping over me, a darkness that threatened to consume me whole. I had one last chance, one desperate plan. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small vial of liquid I'd taken from the basement. With trembling hands, I hurled it at the cauldron. The vial shattered, and the liquid inside sizzled and hissed. A room filled with a blinding light, and a deafening roar filled the air. The staff members screamed in agony as they dissolved into mist, their forms fading away like shadows in the morning sun. When the light faded, I was alone, standing in the now empty restaurant. The cauldron had crumbled to dust, and the dark presence that had haunted Whataburger was gone. I stumbled out of the restaurant, shaken to my core. I never looked back, never returned to that place of darkness. Whataburger had been a front for something unimaginable, something that defied explanation. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that I narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. I often wonder how many others fell victim to the restaurant's allure, how many lost their souls in pursuit of its forbidden delicacies. And I can't help but wonder if Whataburger still exists, lurking in the shadows, waiting to ensnare its next victim in a web of darkness and despair.